No one makes magic in business like Disney. Join us as we hear from Disney cast members, influencers, and enthusiasts to uncover the secrets of what it takes behind the scenes to make Disney such a successful and well-loved brand. We will hear their journeys, inspirations, and have some good old-fashioned Disney fun along the way. So relax, pull up a chair, be our guest, and let's get down to Bippity Boppity Business. Welcome to my magical corner of podcast land. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm really good, Rita. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Of course. So today we're going to talk about a couple of things that I'm especially excited about. Things like storytelling, branding, bringing back the wonder into our work, and some of the gems maybe you learned from some of those awesome Imagineers that I keep hearing people talk about from your time when you used to work at Disney. But before we get down to the business side of the Bippity Boppity, I wanted to ask you an icebreaker question. So are you ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
So
no problem.
when was the last time you used your imagination?
About 20 minutes ago.
Really? Tell me about it. If you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at, I'm with a new company now, and we're building some stuff for Roblox. And we're trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do on Roblox? And so we're trying to imagine what kind of experience it is other than just simply being a game, because we have characters that can interact in real time. And they're animated. And so we literally had a little brainstorm session on Zoom, which is really difficult, but it was fun. Yeah. So we're trying to figure out what would we want if we could interact with an animated character. And so that's what we're thinking about.
Well, that's an important question to ask, though, because at the end of the day, you're putting yourself in the shoes of that experience, and I feel like that's going to be a recurring theme in our conversation. Let me go on to the next icebreaker question, though, before we get into all that. Okay, so what's the best fantasy story that you've ever heard that you still remember and love to this day, and why?
The best fantasy story. That's actually a really interesting question. I mean, I've been surrounded by Disney stories for so long. But when you say fantasy, though, my mind immediately goes to like somewhere else. And I have to say, one of my favorite films is Lady Hawk.
Okay.
I really like adventure like that, but it's not heavy, Lord of the Rings heavy. And it's not too scary. There's just charm to it. And I'm a big fan of easy entry points into storytelling. So if you're going to tell something that's fantastical, you really need to be grounded in people's character defects and who they are and where they need to go. And that movie just is a really good, it's just fun.
Yeah, it's true what you said. Actually, it ties in greatly to the theme of the character of a story. We often are attracted to certain characters more than others because there's some elements of them that make them feel more human, a little more authentic. They're not perfect, and that's how we relate to them a little bit more. And the last time we were speaking, I remember we kind of had a general conversation about the difference between story and narrative, like the story, like what our story is, and what the narrative is that we tell ourselves. So, when was the first time in your career you thought to yourself, like, you know what, like, what is my story and what do I want to do versus what my narrative is, what I think I should be doing?
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I would be
Uh-oh. Oh no. Please hold. Do 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 do, and we're back.
literally didn't touch anything.
It's okay.
what I always wanted to do was tell stories or be in entertainment in some way. Um, and I wasn't quite sure how that was going to manifest itself. It changed as I got older. There was a point though where I literally shifted from what is, what's my intention to what do I need to, what's pulling me forward? What does the universe want me to do? And understanding who I was. And that was in about 2006. And I had been working at Disney for a while. I was a producer and an art director, and I was heading toward creative direction. Anyway, I was working in digital, and I, because I'm a jack of all trades, it's very difficult for me to be pigeonholed into one little area. So my father-in-law invited me to a producers guild event. I didn't even know what that was at the time. And I got to meet with people who were producers. And what I quickly realized was, oh, these are my people. They do lots of different things, and they orchestrate and they pull other people together. So they orchestrate and they synthesize, and then they coordinate in order
Mm.
to hit a goal. And that, I immediately knew I was a producer after that. And I identify myself as a producer. I mean, I'm also a creative director and I can do art and all that. But if you were to say, what's my mission? It's to produce stories, and that means to pull a team together.
Wow, that's so impactful. I really needed to hear that because personally, I'm on a journey of growing as a podcast producer. I do this for myself for this podcast, but there are a few other shows that I produce out there for my business. But lately, I've been really thinking, like, to myself, what does it mean to be a true producer? What does that look like? And just that definition alone is I relate to that. I feel like other producers that I meet, there's just this energy and chemistry and passion there of a combination of like strong work ethic, but also creative resilience. And I just it's something I really admire. What was that feeling in the room when you were sitting there like, wow, like this could be the thing that gets my story started?
I felt comfortable, and
Hmm.
that's really important. I mean, I think my creative partners and I have been talking recently about low resistance. If I feel that I am doing something and I'm hitting a bunch of resistance, or it doesn't feel right, or I don't enjoy the people that I'm talking to, any of those things, I used to not listen to those things. They're really important to pay attention to, because the universe is pulling you one way. And if you are, like me, I used to have my stubborn will was just trying to go that way where I thought I needed to go. And it's, you really got to let go, and being in a room with a bunch of people who understood what it is to have no one know what you do, because
Yes.
no one knows what a producer does. They all want the title or the credit when it comes to award season. But when you
Right.
ask what a producer does, people are like, they kind of, I don't know. But it is literally putting it all together, whether you're producing it yourself, you're a music producer, you're a movie producer, TV producer. And it's important to listen, because that's part of the job, is listening to the team around you and making sure that they have what they need so that you can clear the runway for everything they need to do. But you also have to listen to yourself. And that's what that room felt like. It felt like I was comfortable enough to be in my own skin finally. And I didn't, of course, hindsight's 2020. At the moment, it wasn't like some lightning struck and I went, oh, this is amazing. Like it took a month or two after that for me to go, wow, that really impacted my life. That was
The
pretty
ch
cool.
the choir of angels didn't just open up from the
Yeah.
sky and go,
Yeah.
"Oh, this
It
is what
doesn't,
I want."
no,
No.
didn't happen that way. It was subtle. But
It's
I did join the organization. I joined the Producers Guild and I got involved very quickly. And then soon after ran for vice president and chair of the new media council. And that was the beginning of a new journey.
That's an amazing story. I think there's probably folks who aren't producers but are business leaders that listen to that sentiment of the resistance and trying to push through things that feel like they should be what you're doing, and like this just has to work because it does, and then ending up feeling like actually like this is not the vibe, like this is not working for me and I should really
Yeah.
listen to my own intuition. And I think what it's a scary transition to make because it requires being vulnerable and authentic, and and that authenticity is something I wanted to talk to you about today is
Mhm.
you know the importance of it. Like, how do you feel that businesses can maintain that level of authenticity and humanity while still at the same time having to strive to make profit and grow and pay the bills? It's such a delicate balance.
It's two different mindsets, and it is. I think you can see it in the entertainment business right now. There's a
Mhm.
lot of chaos and uncertainty. The layoffs are just everywhere, and
Everywhere.
as businesses, if they're public businesses,
Right.
it is very hard for them to ride on sentiment because they have so many stakeholders internally and at the top level that are not necessarily a part of the content process. So if you have a board of directors, and you've got people in Wall Street that you need to share quarterly earnings for, you're on a very short turnaround in terms of profitability and growth. And so you're quarter to quarter short term results. And that doesn't allow for a lot of long term investment, especially big long term investment where you have to put infrastructure or story or, God forbid, have faith in something that doesn't have immediate impact.
You mean
So
something new that's not just another live action? Sorry, guys. Love
telling
y'all,
you,
but
it's hard. It is hard. And that sentiment is what can, and flipping the switch to the other direction is you believe in something, you let teams do what they need to do, and you provide air cover for them, and you give and you plan annually. And this is part of the business process is not having an annual operating plan that is just so close to you that you can't get in front of anything new. You just keep doing the same thing. Having a long-term plan that doesn't guarantee that I'm going to hit this number. You can put that in there as a projection, but really it needs to be more about, well, what are you going to achieve that you're going to be able to give your consumers? And then if you do it well, your numbers will rise. But having the right kinds of targets and objectives for long-term planning, it's really important to think alternatively. And financial departments and businesses that are on this hamster wheel, they don't want to talk about that because they're beholden to short-term gains.
well, I honestly think about throwing it back to Walt Disney himself. I really admire that man's innovativeness and just I guess the better word is like sometimes blind faith, having that longer why, that longer vision and plan to create content and that in my opinion was really just disrupting the way that content was being made and being a true storyteller. So I wonder, for those who are not in corporate business positions, maybe they have their own businesses who they have a little more control, like what are some ways to discern what that long-term why is like for the content and for what they're doing. Is there anything that you're doing with your business right now that's kind of helping with that maybe?
Yes. In fact, we just had a long conversation about it over lunch. And it's hard when you're trying to rub two sticks together to make something happen and you have your own business. We're in that situation right now where
Mhm.
we don't have investment other than our own time and a little bit of money that we're making as we just start, getting up to speed. So there's two mindsets that we have to keep in mind. There's expansive and reductive, and this is actually something that we practiced in at Disney when we would do brainstorming. And the expansive is blue sky, no holds barred. You go as far as you can, and you really think outside the box. And that's really important because you want to go as far as possible and you want to let go of your bias. And I would say for anybody trying to think about what's my purpose and what's my why, it isn't about making money. That's not the goal. That's a result of doing business. What you want to do is really think, and I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek. I think he's, Start with Why is one of the best books I've ever read. And it really gets down to this notion of what's the purpose of what you're doing? So for example, for me personally, I tell stories to make the world a better place. That's too broad, I think, for a lot of people, but anything that they do is storytelling. We're storytelling right now. When I talk to my mom on the phone, we're telling stories. Doing the dishes, talking to my wife, we're telling stories. That's how we interact. So I think that it's really a matter of how do you want to interact with the world, and what is the service or product that you're going to give people that's going to improve their life, make them happier, provide them joy, help them grow. Like, it's all the things on the positive side of the spectrum. And it doesn't just have to be things that, well, it's going to make their life easier. I don't know that you have to do that. I mean, going to the gym isn't easy, but it sure makes you healthier. So
Right.
that, working hard is definitely doesn't have to always be about being easy, but it has to have purpose. I think then in a reductive model, when we were sitting around the table talking about what's our big purpose, we spoke about the big vision and what we want to do. And then we also had to think about, well, how are we going to get there? So we went
Right.
from strategic vision to what's the tactic? On a boat, you got to tack left, tack right, tack into the wind. What are we going to do today, tomorrow? But having that destination, we were able to then say, oh, there's a bunch of stuff we shouldn't do. And
Right.
that's my favorite thing to tell people is have a big list, bigger than your things to do, of stuff not to do. And I think that's what those two mindsets allow you to do, is remove things that are not in alignment with what your purpose is.
That is worth its weight in gold right there. I'm gonna play that back for myself at least 3 times when I'm in decision, like, shiny object syndrome mode, okay? Like, there's 'cause there is so much you can do, and like you said, just the idea of doing something because maybe it makes someone's life easier or it's better, or you think it could make maybe your life easier or it might be better. It may not always be that way, and that kind of thinking is very much a commodity, and it will become commoditized over time because story in the long term is going to be what's memorable, what sticks, what creates that, like, place in people's minds, and that's something I really admire about Disney's practices, specifically some of the things that Imagineers are able to do through story. And I wonder, is there anything, maybe in passing talking or being in the same vibe as some of these folks that you've learned or you've been inspired from by them?
Oh, 100%. Actually, I did an art exhibit. I guess it's about 4 years ago now. It was a pandemic project, and I worked on it with a friend of mine who's actually an Imagineer,
Wow.
and his name is Steve, and he's fantastic. I told him that I needed to do these dioramas that were interactive, giant art pieces of the classic Universal monsters, and they needed to move, and they needed to have atmospherics and sound and audio, and it needed to be basically Haunted Mansion in a box.
Holy moly, that sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
So he said that, and he said, "How are you going to do that?" And I said, "Talking to you." And so he knows how to program, on like small computers like Raspberry Pis, and we were able to lay out a timeline and trigger a bunch of animatronics, which she's also a really, really, really good at. And we literally did that. And what I learned from that process is that anything is anything is possible. I didn't know how to. I don't know anything about animatronics. Well, I do now. Servos and all that kind of stuff. But all I knew was that I needed to convey what the story was that I wanted to tell, and it was really important for him to understand that, so he could see the story in his head too. And then we had time together where I also said, well, it's about what he wanted to do too. And that's a really important part of the Imagineering way, is working together. And it's hard sometimes, but it's really important, just like on a movie or TV show or anything that's communal, where people participate together to create something or work on something. But in the creative process in particular, he needed to bring his vision to it as well. And so I needed to learn how to let go and to allow wherever the river was going to take us together to get there. And it, of course, the end product ended up being far bigger, better, more crazy than I could have imagined. And that was because two minds were working on it.
That's so impactful. I think I'm in a season where I am trying to learn how to let go in everything. And, I find that the more that I think I control things, that the worse that I do, to be honest. There's so much, basically what I'm trying to say is, there's value in a team and there's more perspectives and more opportunities that can be created as a result of working as a team. But from your professional experience, I would love to hear some advice on ways to give, creative feedback and how to like communicate some of those more sensitive things, because especially when you're creating things that you're passionate about, it can be it can be a sensitive topic to basically say, hey, you don't just say, hey, I don't like that. Like, what are some tips on like communicating through that kind of creative process and exchanging feedback and collaboration?
Um, that's a big one because that is a management, especially in a creative company, challenge. It's always a
Mhm.
challenge. Uh, what I have heard, and I agree with it partially because I think
Mhm.
there's more magic to it than that, is active listening. I think active listening is boiling it down too much to kind of a pragmatic or mechanical process, and you can come across as being robotic.
Mm.
Like you saying something and then me saying, "Oh, you're saying this, so I want to make sure that you're heard. So let me repeat that to you. Is that correct?" That
Right.
is, I've had people do that in my yearly reviews where I've gone in to learn what I've messed up on or what I could do better. That's not what I'm talking about. Listening though is really important, and I
Right.
think the most important thing that I have learned is leading by example. So if I'm going to have a conversation with someone about what they are doing, I need to be involved early. So I don't want to stand over someone's shoulder. It doesn't work. But what I want to do is I want to have a conversation with them separately from their workspace and what they're doing on a regular basis to check in. And it's
Mm.
to check in with them. And by checking in with them and leading and saying, hey, this is going on. I just want to tell you what's happening in the department and with the project. And I know you're working on stuff, but this is happening. And by the way, I don't know if I'm scared because I know we're doing something new, but I know we've got people like you and I can trust all of you to do the best thing. So I was just, tell me what you're up to so that I can feel good because I want to continue to champion everyone and create air cover. What do you think is happening and how are you doing? That's a
Wow.
very different conversation from looking at someone's work over their shoulder and judging them and telling them when it's too late, they've already worked on something, and then saying, go back and do it another way. That kind of feedback is completely unproductive because it also wastes a lot of time. So if everyone knows where they need to go from the beginning and they believe they know where I'm going and what I expect personally, people will stay in alignment. And if they're not, they also need to know that if they're going to take a risk on something, they should check in and say, I had an idea. I know it sounds crazy, but I want to do this. I think it could work. It might not, though. What do you think? Can I try it? Can I not? Then you negotiate on, well, you know what? Actually, why don't you take half a day off, do something at home, do a little experiment, see if it works, and then give me a call and let me know what you think. Whatever the solution is, or yes, just go, all the way.
Right.
Um, that means just regular communication, just like it's important for anything anyone does in their lives. Just be honest.
Being honest. It's easier said than done
Oh
sometimes.
my God, totally. Especially when you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And when I don't like something, I will tell people, I say, I'm not going to be dishonest. It's not resonating with me. However, it's resonating with you. Tell me what you're thinking and give them the benefit of the doubt and say, you know what? It doesn't have to just be me. Let's bring some other people in. Let's talk about it. Let's see what they think. I mean, the
Mhm.
Pixar method for storytelling is, how do you make it better? How do you make something suck less? And you bring people together and they are very honest with each other. And it's not just two people's opinion, it's a lot of professional thinking that goes into something, because what they want is they want that person to succeed, not just the story, but that person. That's a difference.
I have so much learning to do. I love this so much because I think, it can feel transactional at times, the work that we're doing, especially someone like myself who is and other professionals who are working in a remote environment. It's more it it almost has like that barrier of feeling like, oh, I can just send a message and just be done with it. But I think it almost takes a little bit more of an effort to slow down and be like, hey, I know I can send this or I can communicate in this way, but how can we make this a more impactful and successful conversation? So, what's
Mhm.
your experience been working and in that in a remote, I guess, more digital environment? Now, I'm assuming than
Yeah.
before, or I don't know.
It's a challenge. I People are communal in nature, I believe, tribal in nature, and presence stimulates all kinds of things in people's minds. All their hormones and their senses, and I. It's really important for trust. Trust
Mhm.
is not just about. I mean, it's mainly about being consistent, saying what you believe, and then acting in a consistent way. That's what trust is. You believe that someone is going to do what they say or act in a way that you expect. Um, but there's also all of these nuances that happen with your neurotransmitters and your serotonin and your cortisol levels and all that kind of stuff when you are not with people and you're staring. Literally, your mind, although your eyes believe you're looking at someone, your body knows you're just getting like energy from a screen, and it's kind of
Right.
bright, and your eyes are like trying not to be diminished by the amount of LED signals coming off of it and radiation. It's opposite. So there's something wrong because it's not real. It is real in a sense, but it's not in person. And that's an important thing also. Like, just to shaking hands is an ancient tradition that shows engagement, trust, eye contact. Even the old toasting, I toast you, that was originally, as I understand, a way to say, my drink is not poisoned. I'm going to pour a little bit of my drink into yours and yours into mine and prove it, and we'll drink at the same time.
I didn't
As
know
two
that.
people, yeah,
That's interesting.
as two
Wow.
people would meet from different clans. So I could be wrong on that, but that's what I've heard, and it sounds like that makes sense to me. I'm like, of course it's that.
That's the story we're going with for today.
Okay,
It's
well,
our
that'll
podcast
be it.
today.
Okay. I do really believe that being in person is really important,
Mm,
especially if it's an important discussion. Now, I really do like the ability to not go sit in a meeting, because I think in the corporate world, and in a lot of just business in general, there's regular, you set a Monday morning meeting, it's an hour long, everyone rolls their eyes and they know they got to go sit, and
yeah.
most of the meeting is not about them. So that's always a tough one. But I think, depending on how you're running your operation, you just need to be thoughtful about people's time. Now, people want to be included too. So that's another thing. You can't include everyone when you're in person because rooms are small.
Mhm.
You can online though. So I think there's a kind of a left right, kind of punch left, punch right ability to do both. We're going to have an in-person meeting for those of you who would like to attend in person and have something to contribute. Please come. Or we're going to be very specific. You can get the notes from the meeting. Everyone's going to get the notes. But then we're going to have a big team meeting where everyone can hear things at the same time. And we're going to read out. Basically, it's like morning announcements in elementary school. You need everyone to know everything at the same time. But boy, I will tell you, there's really nothing as good as really small groups. Breakout teams are incredibly effective, especially if the leader of the organization or the group or the team or the movie or the TV show, whatever it is, stops by and checks in.
Wow.
So
That's just the energy. I would love to experience that one day. I think, um, you're right. There's some sort of magic, I don't have any other word to say, for what happens when people are in person and make something together. Now, definitely there's parts of what I do that I do like being remote, like the more tactical, like, mundane, like things that need to be done. Like I lose my mind if I'm in an office setting where I'm just like sitting down and doing like data entry, like that's it. Like I've lost my mind. You know what I mean? But even with podcast interviews, like I've done a few in person, and something about that energy in person, it's so cool. Like I wish I could do more in person, to be honest, because you're right. There's that sense of just unspoken communication and connection that's formed when you're creating in that way.
yeah,
But technology is still really great because at the end of the day, I wouldn't have been able to talk to you at all if it weren't for what we're doing now. I wouldn't have met
yeah.
you in this medium. So that's it's right what you're saying. There's a little bit of touch and go, but something that I wanted to kind of tie this conversation into is, the Imagineers at Disney are known for their ability to really seamlessly blend creativity with technology, and they kind of find that awesome balance in the middle. um, how do you see this type of approach shaping the future of business and the consumer experience beyond just the theme park industry, maybe with some of the work that you're doing as well too?
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. His name is Luke, and he's an Imagineer. And I was visiting him, and we had a lovely lunch. And even that lunch was inspirational because it was about experience.
Mhm.
They have a lovely courtyard outside, and we were in the sun. And the way that they've engineered the tables, people see each other. It's not about isolation, and people flow past one another. And I mean, to a certain degree, it's not like they overthought this, but people are together, and you may be on a project, you may not see someone, so you're gonna pass each other. So, like you were talking about being in person and the value of that, I think that the future of entertainment, I believe there's an important opportunity beyond theme parks that takes the notion of what theme parks do, which is it brings people together. I read an interesting article in the LA Times, and it was talking about Generation Alpha and Gen Z they were going back to the mall. That there was a lot of data that was coming in from Westfield and that kind of thing. And even our local mall, they do have something called Topanga Social, which is a new experiment for a different kind of food court. It's still food, but it's public tables.
Okay.
And it has greens. So there's greenery and trees, and they have music, and they have programming for content and events. But the place is organic. And I know that coming out of the pandemic, there is a need that people have, especially younger generation, to find each other,
Yeah.
especially as these devices continue to disrupt us, and social media and algorithms drive people into niche corners away from each other. I mean, even my Netflix queue is separate from my wife's Netflix queue.
What?
Why don't we have one that's together? Chris and Stacy's profile, because we
Yeah.
watch TV together.
Yeah.
So there's this weird behavior that happens even with gaming, and I think isolated experiences where you're alone, and people don't necessarily want to be alone. I mean, I think there's times for sure, but ultimately people want to find each other. And I believe that, if you look at the Netflix, they did a bunch of pop-up experiences, the most recent for Squid Games, where you could actually be in the Squid Game itself.
Right.
They did one for Stranger Things. Sony has announced that they're going to explore experiential content. One of the big ones that's happening now, one of the companies, Meow Wolf, is popping up places all over the place. And those experiences are big walk through dark ride type of immersive environments.
I haven't heard of
And
that company before. So that's kind of the thing that they're spearheading. Okay,
yeah, and
interesting.
they
Yeah.
and they bring tons of artists together to build out physical space, and a lot of the um, environment is interactive or
Mhm.
participatory, where you touch something and there's a reaction. And Disney has been doing this forever, and I believe that this is a new business model that's coming, and it's happening because the notion. I mean, people aren't going to the movies the same way that they were. The entertainment industry is disrupted. Streaming is the future. I don't know. I think everyone's kind of scratching their heads on that right now. I think that access to content, and a lot of it has happened, but ultimately, if I never leave this room, I never leave this office, which I didn't for a few years during the pandemic, even when I was working at Disney still. What's the quality of my life?
Right.
And I think that's what the big opportunity is for new storytellers is think about what you're doing, because if you're just telling the story of a lone person in the middle of the woods, you can do that once or twice, Call of the Wild, okay, but really it's all about stories are about people and what happens to them.
That's why I personally have such a passion for podcasting as a medium for businesses to use for content creation, because I think a lot of what we do can feel isolating in our rooms, in our offices, in our own heads. Like, what do I post today? What do I do? What do I do? And this kind of medium, at least for me, forces me to sit back and really listen and have an opportunity to co-create with somebody else and fuel my day in a way that I wouldn't normally have been able to do if I was just doing another 3 things I learned about blah blah blah, kinda like selfie video or whatever, you know?
Right.
How have you seen the industry, like, inspire you lately in a way that you weren't expecting, that you think we should be keeping our eyes on out for?
um
Is there anything at all?
I'm not gonna say Barbie. I mean, I thought the movie was fun. I know everyone
Yeah.
rallies around it. I read the trades and I see what where the swarm of information goes.
Mhm.
Um, I I probably I don't know that there has been something. There's been little things here and there. Um, I know that you and I had talked briefly. I mean, the turtle talk thing.
Right.
I mentioned that earlier in our conversation. That kind of live interaction with an animated character kind of blew my mind when I saw that.
Yeah.
Um, I did see something at Imagineering several years ago, and I know that they've actually integrated this kind of technology into their parks, and it was a test. It was there for their R&D day,
Mhm.
and it was a frozen experience, and it was literally I put on a headset and a VR headset, and I was able to pick up a magic snowball
Oh,
and
that's
throw it,
fun.
and I threw it, and it exploded, and all these particles went everywhere, and Olaf came running out, um, and it was just a small test, but I had such a visceral reaction to being in an environment that the music was there, and it was story told the
Mhm.
right way. It wasn't just pretend baseball, throw a baseball. It was a magic snowball. And then there was a reaction to it. And it just felt like I was a kid, and it was like my imagination just spilled out in the room around me. And, I got a little teary eyed. And those kinds of experiences are when somebody asks, how can you take fantasy and imagination and make it real? And you can do it two dimensionally, and I think put it out on film and TV. Clearly that's happened. We do that. Now it's a matter of like, how can you do it again and again and again? But I
Yeah.
think the immersive kind of participatory or interactive space really fascinates me. I'm a prior governor for the Television Academy, and sat on the jury award for the Emmys, for interactive Emmys, several times, including their Innovation Award. and the
Wow.
same for the Producers Guild. And um, some of those things that have come through have really have blown my mind. And I think when they leave the world of being novel and they become sustainable and they become true innovation, which means that they can sustain an industry and you can repeat that at scale, I think then those kinds of experiences are going to become another paradigm shift for us, just like we had, books and then the newspapers and the printing press and the radio and film and television. And I think that this will be another one. We had social media, but I think that, interactive experiences are going to reach a whole new level. We'll see what AI does to interrupt that process or complement it.
Yeah, we don't
But
know. That's the crazy thing too, is that it can the AI side of all of this innovation could either make it great or it could ruin everything, and we really don't know which one it's going to be. Like, what do you feel how do you feel about that?
yeah, I mean, I see the thing that concerns me is the speed at which the competition between the technology companies, the speed at which it is teaching itself, and that they are letting it teach itself
Yeah.
to continue to grow. Intel, in fact, I read a quote. They I think they said, kids, students shouldn't learn how to do software development and coding. They should let AI do that. Well, okay. Well, that's exactly what your company wants, because then, your stock price continues to go up. But
Right.
then you have a lot of people that don't have jobs. So I think there's a reckoning, and I don't know which way it's going to happen, because we're in the middle of the storm right now with all of the churn and the chaos with the entertainment industry, and it's all driven by technology. Streaming wars, now artificial intelligence, and look, at the end of the day, what do people need? That's the compass. What do people need in their lives? That is where you find the North Star. And they don't need, faster this, faster that. You could give that to them, but then you're commoditizing all of this innovation. And you've commoditized storytelling. I mean, how fast can you flip through on TikTok all of these things that people have created and just dismiss? I dismiss you in five, easy swipes. Like, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I'll look at for 5 seconds. Okay. And yet these people their mental health is challenged, because they're obsessed with just constantly making content, and they might be making enough money to make a living. But if they miss a day, miss a week, they want to go on vacation, their viewership drops. It's just the
It's
hamster
so
wheel.
hard. It's so hard, and I felt that way for a while too with some of the stuff I post on LinkedIn a lot, and it felt like I posted almost every day, like, every business day for a year, and by the time I got to the end of the year, I was like, "What the heck was that for?" I mean, yeah, like, I grew my business, but, like, did I did I actually create anything that I was, like, super excited about? You know what I mean? Like, I was looking back at some of the stuff that I did, and I was like, if someone had asked me, "Rita, show me your best work," would I have anything that I would consider my best work, or is it all just run and gun, here you go, post and ghost kind of a thing, you know what I mean? So, it is important. I think that's such an important thing. Well, hopefully, you know what? Not hopefully. I'm going to take that back. I don't think they will ever commoditize true storytelling, because that's how we make sense of the world. And it's been going on since before people even like had buildings and there was cavemen drawing on paintings. You know what I mean? I feel like in caves or whatever. Like, I don't think story will really ever go away, but maybe the medium in which we convey story is probably what's going to change. What do you think?
Yeah, and it already has changed, but the tenets of storytelling are the same, which is, I've had this experience. It happened to me, these things. I did this and this happened. And now I'm going to tell you. I'm going to share it with you. And that is how we live our lives. And what makes it interesting, and I'm a big fan, this is one of my favorite sayings, is, if it's not a good time, it's a great story. And that's really what makes storytelling work. So if I'm just watching everyone, and this is why I think a lot of content on streamers is driven by data, is really not watchable. If it's commoditized and homogenized because data is saying make it accessible for everyone and sand off all of the things that might be offensive to people
Right.
on in every direction. You suddenly start to take a story which is true regardless of if it's offensive or scary or terrible or whatever, and you just make these little easy to swallow pellets that are nothing more than no flavor, and they're not real stories. They are just the same story with no experience in it, given to everyone over and over and over again. It's like Wall-E when everyone was sitting in the chairs and just drinking their juice and
I was
gaining
just
weight. And
talking to my boyfriend about that. I was like,
yeah,
"Why do I feel like Wally is, like, eerily, like, on point right now
oh
these days?"
yeah,
Like,
it's
it's
happening.
so oh god, it's
They knew.
happening.
Yeah,
They
they knew.
knew. Oh, well,
Yeah,
if I get a cute little robot friend out of it, I won't be as mad. I'll be able to cope in some way, maybe.
exactly. Well, we just need the robots to actually
To
become
be our friends?
self-aware in order to help us out of our problems because we're not doing a great job of it yet.
Well,
But yeah,
I have a little bit of a fun way to close out this interview. So I have a few rapid fire, like kind of fun questions. Would you be down for it? Would you want to try it? Okay,
yes.
let's do it.
Come on, everybody. Here we go. Off to question land.
Okay, so if you could have any Disney character as your business partner, who would it be and why?
I don't know why I'm thinking Gaston. I don't know why. That's the first person. That's like why he's terrible. Why would that? Anyway, I don't know.
We need to address that in therapy, but
That's
fine.
weird.
That's not
Or Pete's Dragon, the animated. Why? Something's wrong.
No idea. All right, next one. Which Disney movie best represents your entrepreneurial journey and why?
Probably the Black Hole, the live action movie. I just think
Okay.
that you have to believe in something, even if you don't know for sure that you're going to get there. You have to have faith.
I love that. Um, on the other side of that, if your business were a Disney song, which one do you think it would be, at least in your current season of business right now?
Spoonful of sugar.
Aw,
Totally.
that's a good one. I love that. Okay. If left to your own worst devices and you were to allow your most toxic traits take the driver's seat, which Disney villain do you think you'd most likely to become as a CEO? We don't That's not real life. We're not going to let this happen, but like what's your villain era arc?
Okay, so this is interesting, and it's based on my personality test, and I don't have it in front of me, but like whatever it is, my daughter and I did an online test. It's like
Yes.
10 as to whatever it is. Turns out we looked up what characters, animated characters or famous characters are the same. Darth Vader. I have the same personality traits as Darth Vader. Why?
Stop.
I don't know. So, like, I guess it's kind of like, I guess I could go Gryffindor or Slytherin with that. I don't know.
We
Sorry,
don't
that's
know.
a Warner Brothers thing, but
Yeah. You know
it's
what?
Darth
It's
Vader.
allowed. It's fine. It makes sense. Okay. I'm just gonna leave this here. I did a personality test and they said I was like Trump. Okay, moving on. Wasn't a
Oh,
fan of that. Okay, anyways.
yeah,
um
maybe.
if you were to get like any Disney foodie thing delivered to your door, like a snack, which one would it be? Like which snack is like your go-to at the theme parks?
Um, oh, it's definitely, what are they called? It's the beignets.
The beignets.
Yeah.
Oh, the beignets. I
I mean,
don't know.
it's just
It
like all sugar and explosion of it's like,
Yes, I'm like a churro, and I love a good churro. It just hits different at the park. I also like
I
Golden
wish
too.
it could be the turkey leg at
Oh,
Disneyland, but who can eat? I can't. It's like bigger
I
than
can
this
never.
room.
Yeah, it's that's such a funny mental image. It really is insanely like
So
twice the
caveman.
size. Yeah. Okay. So last one. My side quest in life and this podcast is to eventually see the Cinderella suite in Magic Kingdom, just to see it. Um, do you happen to have the key? Because I really need to get in.
No, I don't. I
You
have
know
been into places I should not have seen. Not have seen. So I've seen
well,
some places, But
Yeah.
unfortunately, they're not going to let me in. Like the basketball
Darn it.
court in the top of Matterhorn, or the underground chambers, all across Disneyland.
Yeah.
Seen if I've even seen the back of Pirates of the Caribbean, and it's surprisingly, you just think that's like
Huh.
wood slats and kind of it looks like the
You're like,
back of a TV set. You're like,
yeah.
really?
You're like, "Did
What?
I go inside of a TV? Like, that's
Yeah,
kinda weird." That's
yeah.
wild.
It's
Alright,
not.
well,
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted on my side quest, and
I
I'll
hope
let
you get in.
I'll
Let me
let
know.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know. Alright, well, Chris, if anyone listening is interested in what you're doing and they want to stay in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I am on LinkedIn, as I tell students that I teach to and anyone that I talk to. I do curate my LinkedIn page constantly. I don't like the feed on LinkedIn. I think it's
Mhm.
a lot of garbage, a river of insanity. But it is a good place to reach out to me professionally. And if people want to ping me there, they just need to say that they've contextualized it by saying where they heard me or what they would like to talk to me about, and I'm happy to respond.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to be on this podcast with me. And for anyone listening, if you don't get anything out of this episode, I hope that you at least leave knowing that story isn't going anywhere. Go find your North Star, work towards it, and create something that leaves an impact. So thanks so much. Thanks,
Amazing.
Chris.
Thank you so much, Rita.